this trade war is not our war. These people are not our friends, and we are not on the same team. I want to speak on Canada. Canada has benefited massively from being essentially a beneficiary of the United States. It's benefited from capital investment coming in and being able to sell goods easily to the biggest consumer market in the world. This has led to a massive development of the productive forces, especially in the post-war period. And the Canadian economy is completely integrated with the American economy. Just to give you an idea, 90% of the Canadian population lives within 150 miles of the border. And nearly 80% of all Canadian exports go to the United States. Therefore, Trump's threats have caused panic in Canada, in the ruling class circles, in the government. The Bank of Canada came out with a study a few weeks ago. If there is a trade war, the GDP will collapse by nearly 6%. This would be the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Just in Ontario, the most populous province, the provincial government estimates that 500,000 jobs would immediately be on the chopping block. So yeah, in the last few weeks, we've seen this, in response, you've seen this rise of Canadian nationalism, almost like a rebirth of it. It was at an all-time low, actually, just a few months ago, with only about 40-something% of the population said they felt emotional attachment to Canada. But now this has skyrocketed up to 85%. We've seen booing of the US national anthem at hockey games, and there's been broad support for this sort of buy Canadian policy, as well as retaliatory tariffs. So yeah, it's important that as communists, we have a correct approach to this. So yeah, a trade war isn't a war, but it is some of the position on war actually applies to this. In any war, any imperialist conflict, this is a conflict between two imperialist powers. The first thing we must always underline is that the main enemy of Canadian workers is the Canadian capitalists. This trade war is not our war. This is a conflict between two different capitalist states, what represents two different capitalist classes who ruthlessly exploit. They're basically fighting over the ability to exploit their workers. But that's just the generalities of the position. And you wouldn't be able to convince many people that are scared just with that. And yeah, this rise in Canadian nationalism, I think there's two sides to it. And yeah, we can't just dismiss it out of hand. We have to patiently explain, especially when workers have genuine fear about losing their jobs. And I do think the advanced workers of the country, they hate Donald Trump. Yeah, and they have a real fear of job losses, and also they don't want to lose, the big one is healthcare. The amount of times people have said, well, if we get annexed, will we have United come in? So there is a progressive kernel of a sentiment in that. But then within nationalism, there's the other side. There's from the Canadian ruling class, who are cynically using this fear to try to protect their dominance over the Canadian working class. They're kind of like a feudal lord mobilizing the peasants against another feudal lord. Yeah, and the nationalism is a useful tool to dupe the population. And so we must engage in conversation and separate the progressive from the reactionary and expose this deception that is being played. Yeah, and we should be concrete. The main enemy is at home. The main enemy of Canadian workers is Canadian bourgeoisie. But yeah, just some concrete examples. For example, the Premier of Ontario, he's kind of considered Captain Canada now, Doug Ford. Yeah, because he came out right away swinging when Justin Trudeau was vacillating. Yeah, he had his hats in the MAGA style, but they said, Canada is not for sale, which we should explain was complete irony. He has been privatizing healthcare in Ontario, and he got caught red-handed in the Ontario Greenbelt scandal. Well, he was selling parts of the Greenbelt to his developer friends, so it is for sale. Also, a lot of these Canadian bourgeois politicians, they cloak what they're doing in we protect Canadian workers. This is what Justin Trudeau's been saying. Really? What did they do with the postal workers last fall? What did they do with the port workers? Who did they side with in the rail strike? Which, by the way, is owned by Americans. So yeah, we see what side they're on. Similarly, François Legault, the great Québécois nationalist, sided with an American company against a union of Québécois workers. Becancour, they locked the workers out for 18 months. Also, more recently, there was an Amazon warehouse. They shut it down when the workers unionized. What did Legault blame for the problem? He blamed the union. So these people are not our friends, and we are not on the same team. I think it's similar with the Buy Canadian sentiment. It should be concrete. They're asking us to buy at Loblaws instead of Walmart. Do these companies really care about us? Same thing with the counter-tariffs. They say we need the counter-tariffs to protect jobs. This has nothing to do with protecting jobs. It doesn't protect jobs at all. They're just using it to protect their market. So yeah, this is not our trade war. And actually, some of the big Canadian companies that are most pushing for the counter-tariffs and benefit most from the counter-tariffs are giant monopolies like Air Canada, the large banks, Bell, Rogers. They have been the most ruthless against Canadian workers and consumers. The Canadian telecoms, we have some of the most expensive cell phone contracts in the world. Yeah, and they blocked Verizon from coming in from the US. Did they do that to protect us from Verizon? No, they did that because they have a nice racket going on where they can extract profit off of us. Bell just laid off 9% of their workforce. And Air Canada is now charging for carry-on bags. And they've been ruthless against the workers, the unions at those companies. So yeah, with the trade war, there's already been also an exodus of capital out of the country. Capital needs predictability. Just the threat of the tariffs has caused about half Canadian companies to start making plans to shift investment to the US. How patriotic. So yeah, the trade war is accelerating all these processes that have been going on in Canada for a while now. And this will likely provoke a societal crisis. It's important to note that it's the Canadian capitalists, they will be the ones doing the layoffs. They will make the workers pay for this crisis. So it's in their interest to convince us that we're all on the same team. It's like a bully stealing your milk money and then trying to convince you that we're all friends. So yeah, what's the solution? There is no easy solution to this. Anyone promising an easy solution is fooling you. We should explain this. There's no reformist solution. Actually, you see this. All the reformists are lining up, actually, behind the counter-tariffs. Even on the left, even someone like Sean Fain, who's considered on the left in the UAW in America, the UAW, I can quote them. The UAW supports aggressive tariff action to protect American manufacturing jobs. This is absolutely no solution. We need an internationalist revolutionary solution. So yeah, who are our allies in this struggle? Well, it's not Trudeau. It's not Mark Carney, who's actually pivoting. He says he's going to balance the budget, which means cuts. I think most clearly what these people are pivoting to was the quiet part was said out loud by Stephen Harper recently. Well, he had an invitation-only event, and he was asked what he would do in this situation. And he said, if I was still Prime Minister, I would be prepared to impoverish the country and not be annexed, if that was the option we were facing. Of course, he's not the Prime Minister, he's not involved in politics, he can say it a bit more honestly. So yeah, these people are not our friends. We need to defend an internationalist class approach. A factory closed is a factory occupied. We argue if the bourgeoisie are going to take the money out of the economy and close jobs, they should be nationalized, those factories. And Canadian workers do not benefit from American workers losing their jobs, and vice versa. Yeah, workers of the world unite. So our biggest allies are the American working class, the Mexican working class, and the workers of the world. And we fight not for isolation, but for a socialist federation. We believe in integration, but on a socialist basis.